On new developments in a story we brought you a few days ago, MS Now Pentagon correspondent was with us here on set. Bring her reporting. Priya Sridhar on our last week about angry military families challenging the acting Secretary of the Navy over the conditions aboard the USS Lincoln as the combat mission against Iran stretches on with no clear timelines. The families of those on board raised concerns over the sailors' mental health, about safety on deck, long workdays, food shortages, water contamination, moldy showers, and sailors running out of toothpaste, deodorant, soap, and other supplies. Now, new reporting shows some of those military members aboard the Lincoln have begun taking desperate measures as the aircraft carrier sets a modern-day record for the most continuous days at sea. The aircraft carrier had been on deployment for well over 260 days after leaving its home port of San Diego on November 21st. Military Times reports one woman says her husband was repeatedly overextended before he attempted to jump overboard from the carrier. She adds that he's scared and remains on medical hold. Another woman tells the outlet her husband was on watch when he saw a shipmate preparing to go overboard as well. She says her husband intervened, calling out to the sailor before grabbing their arms and pulling them onto the deck. This is extraordinary reporting, first from Priya at MS Now, who brought us that last week. Now the Military Times guys going into detail. Since November 21st, they have been out to sea. This is the longest deployment on a ship like that ever. And when we think about, what these guys and women have been going through, and with the fact that the Secretary of Defense seemed very interested and obsessed with their testosterone levels, but not whether or not they're getting real food aboard the ship as this war drags on, and who knows how long they'll be out there. There have been town hall meetings from these military families in the San Diego area where they have just erupted, understandably so, on leaders about the conditions they're hearing about from their loved ones on board that ship.
It's about military readiness. This is something that we worried about on the Armed Services Committee all the time. You have to make sure the rotation is such that people can do their rotation, they can do their duty, then they can get home.
There is no rotation.
They can get back on base, they can rest up, they can be, again, prepared. So this comes down to military readiness. I've never seen anything like this before. And again, this is the problem. This is what happens when you have a defense secretary that's obsessed about the color of people's skin, whether somebody is a man or a woman, testosterone levels, this obsession over DEI. And that's all we ever hear about. And what we're not hearing about is, the basics. The basics always start with readiness. So men and women of the United States military, militarily ready to go into combat if called upon. And this is the exact opposite of what you do to make sure that they are prepared and ready to go. And this doesn't have anything to do with toughness or this or that or the other. There are normal rotations. This is insane by any measure
Dangerous.
At all. And so think about it, Jonathan Lemire. We have this happening on the USS Lincoln. We have our sailors being treated like third-class citizens, treated like trash, actually. So we're not taking care of job one, which is, again, military readiness. And secondly, we're not even able to keep count of the munitions that we have. Pete Hegseth's DOD has run out of munitions to fight a hot war with Iran that Pete Hegseth told the president we should start. So he's sitting around talking about testosterone levels and doing all these stupid promo videos that are supposed to make him look tough, obsessing over somebody, whether somebody's black or white, obsessing over taking down the pictures of the man who flew more combat missions than anybody else in the history of the United States military. But because Chappie James was black, Pete Hegseth had to take the picture down. These are the things he's obsessed on. We hear for years, oh my God, They're too concerned about DEI. It's getting in the way of the mission. No, it's just the opposite. It's Pete Hegseth, who is so obsessed with the color of somebody's skin, or whether it's a man or a woman that's doing the mission, or whether the person is black or white, that's doing extraordinary things to protect and defend the United States of America. He's so obsessed over the little things that readiness is falling by the wayside.
Showing off on group chats.
Showing off on group chats. Hey, we're about to bomb here.
Firing
and
the
there.
people who would have been able to identify the collateral damage in a war strike.
So,
school.
Not taking care of first things first. He's actually worried about social, he wants to worry about social issues and social policies inside the Pentagon instead of making sure we have the munitions we need and making sure that our military men and women are ready for warfare and they get like sane, rational rotations like every other commander in chief and every other secretary of defense before him actually did.
Yeah, the secretary obsessed with, as you say, rewriting the Pentagon's history, passing over officers for promotions, firing officers. Almost all of those officers, we should note, either women or people of color. He is, I believe, posted another social media video this week. He was out visiting some sailors in San Diego. The secretary loves to do that. And that connects to the Iran conversation we were having a few minutes ago, that, yes, the president has settled on this campaign of economic pressure, in part because even if he wanted to escalate hostilities, he can't. We have plenty of offensive weapons, that's true. But when Iran hits back, we're so short of the defensive munitions, we have no confidence. We report that we could defend our bases in the region as well as our allies who have absorbed the blunt of what Iran has done to this point. And the president and DOD leadership had a pretty heated exchange about 10 days ago or so at Camp David. The White House continues to insist that Secretary Hegseth's job is safe. But I am certainly told, and I'm hearing this for a while now. Yeah. Hearing this for a while now that there are people in the building have soured on him, but the president, at least for now, it's the only vote that matters, Joe. President Trump still believes in him.
Why?
Okay.
I mean, this is a guy that's caused problems time and time again, starting with Signalgate, but now he's pushed the president into the war, along with Netanyahu, who's pushed the president into the war, supported this war, and he can't even plan out the munitions to actually fight this war, to defend who?
Or the targets.
To defend who? To defend our troops on the ground across the region. This was abysmal planning, and any other Secretary of Defense would have been fired by now, and I'm not sure why he's still there.